Jay here for Stretford Paddock, that's Joe Smith, and this is a video taking a look at the enigma that is Matheus Cunha. Cunha, who's been flying, hasn't he, under Michael Carrick, banging in the goals, taking on defenders, impressing us all, and we thought we'd do a little bit of a deep dive into just what he's about, what makes him tick, and how good he can be in this Manchester United team. Joe, always a pleasure to see you.
Nice to see you.
Are you still,
a very exciting talking point today.
It is. Are you still sort of on this sort of Michael Carrick wave of optimism and positivity that seems to have engulfed us all?
I think we've got to be, haven't we?
Yeah.
And it's been 3 games, 3 wins. We learned some stuff in the Fulham game that I think we need to maybe correct or kind of address before the Tottenham and the West Ham games. But three wins in 3 games. And those little moments that can go either way, that under Amrim were going the wrong way, so far are going our way. That's literally all you can ask for, and as much as Carrick's done to sort of push that, you've got to give him loads of credit. So yeah, I'm really excited.
No, I've got, when we talk about Cunha, we've got a quote from Michael Carrick after the Man City game, which, I mean, you could have almost said this about the 3 games he's played under Michael Carrick, but he said, you know, about Cunha coming on and making a difference and feeling it, whether that's actually making a difference, and that's something we spoke about this week, making a difference on the pitch, all from the sidelines, all from the changing room. I've seen the boys supporting the director's box and celebrating the goal. For me, to see that attachment, the connection from everybody is huge. Moving forward, Matheus, you know, made a big impact when he came on. And then he goes on about the goal, obviously, but in terms of how he went about the game, I was delighted with him. So obviously that's focusing on the City game, but that could have been the Arsenal game. You could have been speaking about him and his performance or his goal in the Fulham game. He's someone that sort of seems to have stepped up a little bit, doesn't he, under Carrick? Yeah. What have you made of him sort of since Carrick's come in? Have you seen a difference, or is this something that's been sort of almost, you know, in the post?
Yeah, I think he's been excellent this season,
right.
And I think because he's not an obvious type of player. He's not an easy to kind of measure type of player. He's not the most predictable of players. I think at times people will come and go on what form they think he's in, or, you know, he'll have 20 minutes of a game, and you mentioned this, he'll have times in games where he's less apparent and less obvious, and then he'll rush in with 3 dribbles in 5 minutes that change the course of the next 20. And I think he's the sort of player that so much down the years for Manchester United, or watching Man United, these are the sorts of players that we love and that can do, you know, brilliant things in terms of making it be a joy to be a Manchester United fan. Like, they're the difference between obviously winning and not winning games, but between loving and not loving games. And that goes a long way, and more than just stats. I mean, we'll look at the stats, and some of his stats are incredibly impressive, by the way. But I think that, you know, the Liverpool game was a big one where a lot of people went, hang on a sec, he's doing more than just goals and assists. You know, those runs at the end of the game, closing the game out, the work rate, getting in front of his man, getting a foul, getting the crowd going, you know, doing all the things that make you stand and cheer. And those things are sort of bleed into the rest of the squad. They're contagious. You know, obviously not everyone's going to be this mercurial dribbling talent that Cunha is and smacking him in from 25 yards like he did against Arsenal. But you can learn and you can create an entire feeling amongst the squad of, we're not going to give up easily, we are going to employ a little bit of the dark arts, and when it comes time to it, we're going to be brave and we're going to go for it, and we're going to take the touch and try and go past the man. We're not always going to play it safe. I think he encompasses, obviously not putting the entire pressure of Man United's identity on one man, but I think he encompasses a lot of what we want Man United to be. And when you put all the other pieces in around him, the more predictable, the more kind of metronomic sort of reliable figures around him, you end up with a squad that is creative but can also, you know, break down difficult blocks. Or like the Arsenal game, that goal that he scored, I think really only him and Bruno, I think, could have scored that goal, sweeping it in 30 yards out, 25, 30 yards out. They're the 2 players that you really would trust to do that. And I think you need players like him in a squad if you want to be properly successful.
I couldn't agree more with all that. I like the fact you mentioned the Liverpool game, because I think if you ever want to show someone who's obsessed with stats a game, to say it's not all about stats, show him that performance by Matheus Cunha at Anfield. Because without him playing at that level, we don't win that match. He keeps hold of that ball, he draws fouls, he causes them problems, he puts them on the back foot when they're trying to attack, and he's stopping them doing that because they're too busy defending him, trying to get the ball off him. That is the kind of performance where you can go, look, that is a top level performance, and it's not about a goal or an assist. It's about him keeping possession, it's about him forcing the defenders, or, you know, even the whole team back. It's about him getting the Anfield crowd aggy, which is almost immeasurable. these are the kind of things that you don't see that on a data sheet. And we're going to get to his stats in a minute because, as you mentioned, they are very good. But that's a good example of how he can bring something to the team, which isn't just necessarily about goals and assists, although they can be important, obviously. There's more to it than that.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt.
No, please do.
He's a momentum shifter.
Yeah.
And like you said, there isn't a number for that. And even just what number do you put on winding up the Liverpool players? And like making them infuriated that they can't build a sustained pressure against us. The same he did, I thought, very well against Arsenal as well. I don't think it's coincidence that, obviously I know we've conceded late goals, but do you know when you're waiting for that final wave of pressure when United were in the lead against Arsenal and when we're in the lead against Fulham, we had 10 minutes or so in both of those games to defend. And I think sometimes, that sort of pressure doesn't quite build in the way that you would hope if you have a player like Cunha in there, or in the way that the opposition would hope, if you have a player like Cunha in there, disrupting things, breaking things up, because it's, like you said, one dribble goes past three men and now they've got to start from their corner flag and they're all pissed and they're waving their arms and it's up and down and he's high-fiving players and we're cheering, and it does change the way games go. I think against Fulham in particular, up until Fulham's first, between the first and second goals, to me that it became inevitable. We sat deeper and deeper and deeper back. We looked less and less and less sort of inclined to defend the box properly, to push out to our men. It felt like that second goal was coming, but and in games that can be stopped and broken by the right type of player, and Cunha is fantastic at that. Just looking at some of the stats, as we mentioned before, only Erling Haaland has had more shots in the Premier League per 90 than
that
Matheus Cunha
surprises
this
me, that,
season.
because when you say something like that almost shows, in some ways, you might look at it as being a little bit wasteful when you're shooting so often and you've not got double figures in goals. You might go, well, he must be missing a lot of shots. But he isn't someone I'd associate with being wasteful. He isn't someone I'd associate with being greedy even.
And also,
he seems to have a very good end product.
Yeah, he does. And he's someone as well that, because he's good at shooting from difficult areas, like some players, like no offence to Dallo, but when he strikes one from 25 yards, you're already willing the team to get back and wait for the goal kick, aren't you? Like, it's not going in. And if it does, it's a rarity and a miracle. Yeah. With Cunha,
if it does, you're getting 8 celebrations for the price of one.
Yeah, exactly. But it's making up for the 100 shots he missed to get up there.
He does that.
But like with someone like Cunha, and like I said with Bruno as well, you like them to take shots from those areas, because sometimes, especially when you're playing against a low block, that's the only thing you can do. Yeah. You can't guarantee, when there's 16 men in the 18-yard box, you can't guarantee there's going to be space to pass it round and play through players. We saw against Fulham the goal that he scored. We did manage to just have enough space in behind that the no-look pass from Casemiro could play him in. And again, it was a brilliant finish. But sometimes, especially if you are good at striking from the edge of the box, that will win you games, and it will win you big games as well. We all know, obviously, Paul Scholes in the Champions League semi-final, we couldn't break them down. We couldn't get out of our box long enough to have real sustained pressure on Barca. So sometimes you need one of your great long shot takers to ping one in from 25 yards. And that might be the only way you get through to a final occasionally. Someone like Cunha is massive for that. Bruno the same. We've seen his free kicks, his long-range goals down the years to win us big games. But I think, Matheus Cunha, when you look at him compared to non-striker forwards, he is by far and away the biggest shot taker per 90 and the most shots on target per 90 as well. Like I said, in the whole league, only Haaland has had more shots per 90 than him. Like, he does a lot of things so well. And other things as well, like his progressive carries is the 12th highest in the whole league per 90. Right. His fouls suffered is the 13th highest in the whole league per 90. High, so really in that top sort of upper echelon bracket, like only 11 players have dribbled the ball more often than he does. Those things are really big for momentum shift and for getting Man United and keeping Man United in the game.
You know what? When I think of Cunha, I think he just reminds me of a player that's a brave kind of player.
Yeah.
He's willing to sort of try things. He's willing to have a go. He's got that edge to him as well. He doesn't get bullied. He can draw a foul, but he's not someone you associate with being soft. He's not someone who's sort of liable to sort of, easily get knocked off the ball. He's a brave player who is willing to try and run at players. He is willing to try a shot when he thinks he can score as well, not just a token gesture of, I don't know what to do, I'll just have a dig from 30 yards and it probably won't go in, but actually believing I've got a chance of putting this away. He does all that, and that's the kind of player we've lacked at Old Trafford. Yeah. We've lacked a player who's got that bravery. Bruno's got it. Bruno always looks to do something, and some people criticise him for it, but I don't mind that. I want players who've got that edge, who've got that little bit of something, I'm going to create something, I'm going to make things happen. We need more of that at United, and he is that guy. Yeah. We knew he was, because we saw it at Wolves. He's like Mbumo. I think Mbumo at Brentford and Mbumo at United, they're very similar. You could argue Mbumo's even, took it up a notch. And I think it's the same with what I saw of Cunha at Wolves and what City United. He's not been overawed by coming to Old Trafford. No. He just carried on from where he left off last season in the Premier League. I know his numbers aren't strong, but he's in a team now that's better. And he's got other players around him who are also providing goals and assists where perhaps at times at Molineux he didn't have that. But I think that's a real testament to his mentality and his ability as well, because we've seen so many players, even players come from other Premier League teams, get to United, and you're like, what's going on here? Why have they sort of shrunk? Why have they not, carried on or been able to do what they've done in the past? And that's certainly not the case with Cunha. I know you want to talk about his role in the team as well, because we were mentioning how good he is in attack and carrying the ball and his progression and the shots he has as well, but he has got a bit of a varied role in this team. He's not just an attack-minded player. We've seen him tracking back as well. We've seen him making blocks. We've seen him making tackles. Yeah. But just tell me a little bit more about how you see his role in this team.
Yeah, I think this is where we enter the sort of potential areas for concern with Cunha. I think this is something that needs to be monitored and addressed one way or another.
Okay.
There's two things. One of them I think is maybe a worry. One of them I think is actually a strength of his. The first one is the positioning. And I think as an inside number 10 or an outside, a wide 10 under, let's be honest, they were playing essentially as wingers, really. Yeah. But, there were number 10s that were maybe slightly more tucked in than a conventional winger would be. He's perfect in that role. He used to be a striker. He's very creative. He likes being in the centre of the pitch. However, now he's playing as a winger, and we've got the heat map for the Fulham game. We can bring that up. You see that number 10 there. He was playing on the left-hand side. He's literally straight down the middle of the pitch. And that is a bit of a concern when you want to be able to build up on both sides equally. Luke Shaw's trying to get up and is trying to sort of make up on that left-hand side. You see number 23 there, trying to make up for Cunha's lack of sort of presence basically on that left-hand side. But that unfortunately means in his willingness and sort of interest in like straying and floating around the pitch means that sometimes you will go 10, 20 minutes where we don't attack down the left.
Yeah.
And that is something that needs to be addressed, whether his role is meant to be the floating roamer that can kind of do things, or whether Carrick needs to say, you're drifting inside too much. When you think the penalty that was overturned to the free kick that led to our first goal, that was Cunha on the right wing, cutting inside off the right, and I think that's something he needs to look at. Maybe one day he replaces Bruno as United's number 10.
Do you think that, let's just talk on that, because that's a huge question to ask.
Yeah.
Because it's one that probably keeps a lot of us awake at night. What is going to happen after Bruno Fernandes at Manchester United? Because he's been such an integral part of this team for the past 5 or 6 years. Well, 6 years, isn't it? Do you think Matheus Cunha can fill those big shoes?
I think he could do it. I think he'd have to adapt his game slightly, but he likes playing just behind the striker. I think the one thing he would have to add that Bruno just has innately is that slight sort of shittiness to him. Do you know where, I think one of the reasons why Juan Mata got moved from being a 10 to being a wide player at United is because he would get occasionally bullied physically. Because you are still a midfielder if you're a number 10. You're down the centre of the pitch. You have to be physically robust. You have to know the tricks of the trade, when to make those tactical fouls and all that. So he would have to add that to his game. But I think he's got the type of personality that would sort of relish, putting add a bit of Joe Linton into your game.
What do you think about his passing? Do you think that is an issue? Not because I think he's bad at passing. We've obviously seen him do some phenomenal passes, but Bruno's passing at times is unreal.
I don't think he'd be as good as
I don't expect him. Do you think he can be in that sort of...
I think he can do it.
And I think suffer too much if he was in that role.
Especially if you've got better passers behind him. If you've got an Anderson or a Wharton or both behind him in those deeper areas, you could maybe have someone that, when Rooney's a bad example because his passing was absolutely sensational, but I do think with very, very good passers in behind, you can have someone that's a very good passer without being maybe a world-class passer doing that number 10 role, as long as they carry the ball well, their passing's good enough, and I think his passing is good enough.
I think there's an element of that with Mainu, where I don't think his passing is as good as Casemiro's, but I've noticed it in the last few games. I think it's something that he's working on.
Yeah,
and I think his passing is good. It's not bad. And I think that might sort of be the same with Cunha, where something you can work on, something that when you've got more responsibility as well, when people are asking you to do that more, you sort of rise to the occasion, don't you?
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden Bruno's not around, and it's more on you to try and find those killer passes. I think he's certainly got it in his locker to be, very effective in that respect. And you can be very effective and not be as good as Bruno Fernandes, because Bruno Fernandes is one of the best passers on the planet.
I think he's the best out-and-out number 10 I've ever seen at United.
Right. As a number 10,
I know a lot of time we've not played with a sort of strict number 10, but someone that you can put in that role is as good as I've seen. So I think the next question is, like we said, the sort of two-parter of it is is he a sort of a throwback to a footballing era that no longer exists a little bit, where he isn't someone that's going to be sort of controlled by formations and, would Pep like him? I think if you think of it like that, or would Arteta like him?
Yeah.
And maybe they would, but there is an element of him that he plays his own game. And I think that if United want to go down the really, really strict, modern, you stand here and run here and pass here and do this, you're on sort of rails as a player, like a lot of modern coaches like their players to be, how would Cunha fit into the next manager's plans? I think that is one area that needs, again, addressing, and it could be an area of concern.
I mean, there's a lot to say on that. I get your point. For starters, I don't want us to be that regimented sort of Mikel Arteta, let's get a corner, or even the Pep Guardiola sort of school of, this is you stand here, I don't want you to think for yourself, you've been told where you need to be. Yeah. I don't particularly want that. I don't think you should be buying players like Matheus Cunha to do that. Let him do what they do best. Let him sort of have that attitude of, I'm going to get the ball, I'm going to make something happen.
Yeah.
And or at times, I'm going to go after the ball and get it and make something happen, even if strictly, maybe I shouldn't be on that part of the pitch, but that's where the action is and I want to get involved. I don't mind that. And I think he's intelligent and sort of reasonable enough to take instructions and to do a different role in the team. This is a guy that came in on a massive price tag and doesn't always start for United, and yet has never kicked up a fuss. He's never made it an issue, has he?
No.
When he's been dropped, he's not been like, why am I being dropped? He comes off the bench and he gives 100% every time. And Carrick's praised him for that. I know it's only a few games, but Carrick said, look, this, and he started one of them. Carrick said, he's been willing to do this role in the team. He hasn't sort of, been asking a question of why am I not starting or anything. And I think that's impressive, especially when you're looking at it, as a player that's coming on a big price tag. It's a World Cup year, and you're one of the best players in the league. Your stats that you mentioned earlier prove that. So I think there's a good chance, a strong chance, he'd be willing to and able to adapt to a system, as long as it wasn't sort of mega strict, where you're almost to the point where you go, well, why have him in the team then? If you're going to make him into something he's not, then is there a way of sort of finding that happy medium where you can keep the good elements of him, whilst maybe asking him to be a little bit more conscious of where he is on the pitch, so he's not completely just, I'm doing my own thing and leaving fullbacks exposed, or if I do lose possession, we're all in a load of trouble. So I think there can be a happy medium there. What do you reckon?
I completely agree. I don't want to watch a Man United that doesn't have at least a couple of players like Matheus Cunha or Bruno Fernandes in. Like, some teams and some fans and some managers, that's what they want. They want utterly strict sort of pawns in the system that will do exactly what the manager asks. And obviously you want that. You need players that will be sort of rigid and do the right things consistently, and that gives you the best chance of winning games. But like I said, especially in cup matches, especially in those big moments against the other top teams, you need players like Matheus Cunha that are going to do something the opposition isn't expecting. You can't always get the ball, cut back, lay it off to your fullback, stand there, make the runner behind, square it to the penalty spot. All that stuff's great, and you need to do that 10 times a game. But on the 11th time, cut inside and smack it to the top corner. Because sometimes when you're watching teams, City is an example, when they're not quite at their best, you watch them and you go, this is just boring. This is unfun, boring football. And when you've got great players and they're winning games, who cares? As a City fan, I'm sure they would say they don't care. But then you watch other teams, you think, we're just watching boring football here. I want players like Cunha, at least one or two. You don't want a team full of them where you're never quite sure what's going on and they're kicking off and they're throwing people's glasses on the floor like you did at Wolves. But you need a couple of players like him in there, especially in attack, where they're going to do something you think, I can't believe he's done that. How has he done what he's just done there? So I think as long as it's, controlled, and as long as he's happy doing it, I think players like him will always be valuable. And especially at Man United, we want to see these mercurial sort of fantastic talents doing what they're good at. So long may it continue with Matheus Cunha. I think he's a brilliant player, and he may drift in and out of games, but when you have players that are capable of those special match-winning moments, I think you just end up loving him, don't you? You can't help it.
He just feels like a United player.
Yeah.
It just, when someone says, what's a United player like? What do you, in your head, should a United player be? That is Matheus Cunha. Yeah. That's what I want to see from a Manchester United player. Getting stuck in, got a bit of an edge for him, works hard, but has that certain something You know what I mean? That other players don't, and he's got all that in abundance.
Sorry to.
No, please do, man.
Before we go, I do think it is worth pointing out. There's a reason why neither of us have said the phrase luxury player or something, because that implies like he stands on the halfway line and throws his arms back when he doesn't get his own way. He works back and he's tackling players on his own goal line, and he's putting the hard yards in as well. It's not like he's someone that thinks he doesn't have to do anything because he's so cool. I think that's an underrated side of his game about how he gets back and sort of wins the ball back and helps his defenders. So that's worth pointing out as well.
Part, and it's good to see as well, because I think at times in the past we've criticised some of the wingers we've had, haven't we? Yeah. The likes of Garnacho, the likes of Marcus Rashford for not doing that. Jadon Sancho for not doing that. He's doing that, and he's doing the business at the other end of the pitch as well. Yeah. So, as you can tell, we're not big fans. We don't really like him. Yeah, we think we should sell him. Get involved in the chat in the comments and let us know what you think about Matheus Cunha. Don't forget as well to check out the merch. There's a link in the description for that. Go and check out Joe as well on Sloppy Joe's podcast. That's been Joe Smith. I'm Jay Motti. This has been a look at Matheus Cunha. Thanks for watching.